4 o'clock hour. Welcome to the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority meeting on Tuesday, February 21st. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and Kara, if you do the roll.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Inscore?
Here.
Commissioner Shalong?
Here.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Here.
Chair Short?
Here. If you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open our public comment period. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to make their comment. Is there any public comment? No comment online either. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have 5 items. The approval of the minutes from the last meeting, approval of payment of claim 9452 to CalPERS in the amount of $140,000. 1.3 is payment of claim 9463 for invoice 2067 from Digital Needs Services in the amount of $8,944.38 for a replacement server and 2 laptops. 1.4 is approve 2 authority allocated bin polls to support the Gasky Neighbors Helping Neighbors Community Fuels Reduction event in May of 2023. And the last item on consent is approved budget transfer in the amount of $19,286. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda?
Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve consent.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Kara, if you would poll the vote, please.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore?
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong?
I'll recuse myself.
Chair Short?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay. Moving on to the director's reports. Ted?
I didn't have my mic on. Thank you for that reminder. The most exciting item on today's agenda is our annual audit. That's not usually very exciting, but since we've been in the red for so long and we are nearly in the black, I thought that was pretty exciting. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when that item comes up. I did submit a letter supporting Del Norte County's application for an illegal disposal site abatement grant from Dominic Mello, and there wasn't time to go through a formal board meeting and get that approval, but I figured it was in line with what we were trying to do, so I drafted that and sent that along. Regarding the facilities, I think I'll highlight an analysis that I did of some of the information we have to compile for the RDRS report, which is the Recycling and Disposal Reporting System from CalRecycle. And looking at the information that I had from Recology and from the Del Norte County Transfer Station, in 2022, we found that over half of the tonnage disposed at the Del Norte County Transfer Station continues to be self-haul. So that's significant because statewide, there's an emphasis on designing things for the collections, which is fine, but self-haul continues to be an active and critical part of how we do what we do here in Del Norte County. The other thing to notice is that credit and debit cards are nearly 1/4 of the transactions currently at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, and that percentage is increasing. So consequently, our finance charges for the credit cards or the charges for going through the credit card system are also an increasing portion of our expenses. And then looking at further analysis, we see that multifamily and apartments are about 29% of the collection tonnage from Recology. So they're continuing to be a significant part of our community, and whenever we conduct outreach to try to expand our residential recycling programs, it's very important that we include apartments and multifamily complexes in that outreach because they're kind of special beasts, but they're still a significant portion of the waste stream. Looking on other items that are no longer on, that are not a specific part of the agenda, attached to the director's report are some of the compliance reports regarding the calculation of the liabilities associated with the landfill. As seasoned board members are familiar with, we've applied annually to get that multiplier reduced. It's the standard practice is it stays fixed at 30, and we've applied over the years and now had that reduced to 15, which reduces the liability associated with the landfill that goes on our books, and that's part of what's brought us to nearly being in the black. Also attached to this report is a summary of our discussions with the Del Norte Food Rescue regarding how we might be able to use the grant that we have to support their efforts in expansion as much as possible. So we're continuing discussions about refrigeration units, and that seems to be their main constraint at this point. So right now they had proposed to us rolling stainless steel refrigeration units that they can put in an enclosed patio area. And we'll continue those discussions. But we had originally envisioned trying to purchase some kind of solar-powered walk-in cooling unit, and we've not found such units at a reasonable price. So we're continuing to shop and try to get the right items for Del Norte Food Rescue to expand. So that concludes that portion of the director's report, and I'll move on to the financials unless there are any additional questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Just one thing, Director Ward, for maybe you and Kira. One of the things you mentioned as coming out of the RDRS regarding multi-unit housing. From an education standpoint, I might suggest that as we look at any future education campaigns, that we look to make one-on-one contacts with managers of these units. Many of our multi-unit housing are out-of-area owners, and simply trying to have a broad spectrum education to the tenants when many of them don't have necessarily a lot of incentive in these things, because many of those units, the apartment complex itself provides the service as a part of their rental agreement. So I think it might be helpful to try to make those one-on-one contacts, maybe a group meeting with those managers to say, here's some things that you can help with your tenants, and it will actually help you on your bottom line as well with doing these things. So it's just a thought from an education standpoint.
An excellent suggestion, and we'll confer with Sandra Ordway, who is the person for Recology, who's done a lot of outreach about her efforts. Thank you.
I just had one question for you, Ted, about
Yeah.
your letter to Tara. So item number 3, it says the Del Norte Food Council still has no food rescue arrangement with either Walmart or Safeway.
Yeah.
Tommy noted that since SB 1383's passed, collections from Safeway and Walmart have essentially gone to zero. Have we been able to do an outreach yet to figure out why that changed since that legislation occurred?
Yeah, I have a cursory overview of why that's happened. And the bottom line is that it's not a surprise that the two entities that are having the least local engagement, Walmart and Safeway, are the two largest supermarket corporations. And so they tend to be organized centrally. And so they've set up their systems so that they're doing backhauls to their central distribution center, and then they're, so in some ways, the reason for these changes is that these larger corporations both take these responsibilities seriously, and they answer them according to their own framework. And so this is the framework that seems to work for them. We're trying to get additional documentation to try to see if we can get some local relationship that's a little bit stronger, but we haven't had a positive result with that yet. Okay. But I have had Mary Pitto, our contractor, look into that specifically.
Very good. Yeah, I was kind of curious to see that just kind of went away, but it seems evident that they're still collecting, but they're sending it away so they can keep track of it.
They absolutely are, and just last week I went to Safeway and looked at their program, and they have a big Gaylord box where they put their out-of-date food, and then I believe that goes back to their central warehouse. But as far as I know, those foodstuffs are not being distributed locally at all.
Do we know what happens to it after it gets back to their warehouse?
Short answer is no, I don't at this point. I assume that they have some contractual relationship with a food kitchen down near their warehouse, but I do not know that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Did you have something?
Just one comment about that. I mean, part of the process of doing this, of food recovery, it's twofold. It's one, it's to take these materials out of the waste stream for a variety of reasons. But the other is also for it to be food recovery to actually benefit the communities in which these foods are produced, namely to those who need it. And so I think that there is some argument that we need to talk to them, and if they have simply made this decision at a corporate level, because organizations like the Community Assistance Network used to pick up this food and was still working with our local food pantries here of distributing that food to people who need it in our community. And so while I think that it's fine that we might say they're checking the box for 1383, if in the process of checking the box for 1383, we are creating a food gap for people in need in Delaware County, then I don't think we should simply be okay with checking the box.
I think these are excellent points, and I share these sentiments, and what we might be able to do with this is work with Mary Pitto, draft a letter to Cal Recycle, essentially, because these are statewide supermarket chains, and they've made these choices in part because of statewide law, and so it seems reasonable to me that we would send a letter to Cal Recycle saying, about these statewide chains that are being a little bit difficult at our local level, perhaps you can deal with them at a statewide level and get them to be a little bit more locally responsive.
Thank you.
That sound a reasonable approach?
Ted, have you talked to the local managers?
Yes, I've talked to the Safeway, and I have not talked directly to the Walmart, but I believe Mary Pitto has reached out to them, and essentially the answer is much the same. They tell us what to do at the central office. This is what we're doing. That's what we do.
Very good. Thank you, Ted.
Shall I move on to the financials, sir?
Yes, please.
Okay. The 2.2 for Commissioners Wilson and Shalong, these may not be familiar. This is essentially the cash balance. It's sort of like the snapshot of your current balance in your checking account, somewhat like that. So at the end of December, we had 1.85 million in the bank plus 198,000 that essentially is last month's rent for the transfer station. So our finances continue their general upward trend. Just past that, you see the accounts receivable aging summary. Kathy Brewer is doing an excellent job keeping our accounts up to date. You can see that we have very minimal amounts due past 60 days. Looking at the claims approved by director, our largest expenses this last month included, of course, our payments to Hambro WSG for the good services they provide at the Delaware County Transfer Station. We also had the sublease payment for the transfer station. We make two payments on that lease arrangement with the county, so this is the second and smaller of those two payments. And then the third largest expense was for the interfund cost plan. Essentially, we pay county for their personnel services and their IT services and auditing services. So moving on to the January totals, though January was a little bit ahead of projections because this is a winter month and so typically is less than our average, but it was above our budget projections for both income for authority service fees and franchise fees. So currently, midway through the fiscal year, we are $138,356 ahead of budget in terms of income. So our finances are looking fine. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Ward? No? All righty, sir. Do you have, let's see. I'm sorry I was distracted, but you have any more to say on your other financial reports there, Ted?
No, I think
Okay.
I've concluded that, but I Should note that Dominic Mello is here in the room, and
That's-
you might want to take the AVA item.
That's exactly, I was marking up my agenda right in front of me. So yes, we're going to skip down the agenda to item 8.1, and discussion and possible action regarding the selection of a towing contractor based on proposals submitted to provide towing-related services. Is that for that's for the vehicle abatement towing service, I guess? Did you have,
I'd
for us?
welcome Dominic to talk about the proposals received and the recommendation.
good afternoon, sir. Okay, we don't have a mic for you. We'll do the best we can, I guess.
Or if I'm just not
Oh,
getting
hey,
close
there you
enough.
go.
There we go, I always have that problem with these. So, yeah, so our former contracted AVA tow company went out, not went out of business, but they ceased towing, so it was California Auto. So we had to fly a new contract, and we had two people submit bids, and one was Affordable Tow, and the other one is North Crest Auto Company. So Affordable is the only company in town that has enough trucks to fulfill that contract. North Crest only has the ability to tow cars. And then based on the bids, Affordable Tow was the most affordable of that. So code enforcement's recommendation is to go with Affordable Tow.
Very good. Thank you, Dominic. Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Mello? No? Is there any public comment on this item? Not seeing any public comment. A motion would be in order.
Just as a point of order, before we do, Chair Short, that we would, for the record, identify that we adjourned as the Solid Waste Management
Thank you.
Authority and convened as the Delaware Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Authority,
Thank you for that.
with
I
the
appreciate
same
that.
members present that were present for the Solid Waste Authority. And with that, I would make a motion that we approve the contract with Affordable Tow on behalf of the Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Service Authority.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Can I have a question, clarification real quick? Is there an option to have North Crest Auto as a backup should Affordable Tow maybe be out taking care of larger vehicles and?
As far as the contract works, I don't know if I can step outside of the contract in a pinch, or
I
is it
guess
just
it's
a
not needed
contract
that often,
requirement?
I think we talked about this several years ago, and I think we have to have
Just one.
a company that is contracted because of the way that this is paid out. I don't think that we can have a backup company. I think we talked about this, but.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the AVA budget, I do have a public nuisance budget through code enforcement, and I've also towed vehicles with that budget. So in an emergency situation, I don't see why I couldn't utilize the code enforcement nuisance budget to fix something and then fall back on Affordable whenever there's AVA tows that come up.
I was just curious. Thank you.
Cool.
Good question.
Thank you, Kelly.
And
you.
it is
Thank
an
you, Dominic.
excellent point in that it's different than the kind of CHP towing contract where they have them in rotation, and they have a list of qualified contractors, and they just call through rotation. AVA is really dealing with vehicles that have sat there for some time, and the important thing on the AVA contract is they need to have an impound yard, because they're one of the core functions of the AVA towing contract. You're taking a vehicle where you're not sure who owns it, and you need to set it somewhere as you go through the paperwork to chase down the VIN numbers to see if there's any record of the last owner. And that process needs to be completed before that vehicle can be canceled and recycled. And so there has to be an impound yard. And so that's not the kind of thing that all towing companies have. And so that's one of the reasons why you can't do a typical rotation.
Thank you.
Very good. So we've had the opportunity for public comment. Kira, would you poll the vote, please?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes, thank you. Moving back up the agenda, we'll adjourn as the Abandoned Vehicle Abatement Authority. Thank you, Commissioner Inscore. And reconvene as Delaware Solid Waste Management Authority and take up item 3.1, receive and file second half and annual 2022 water quality monitoring report for Crescent City Landfill from Lawrence and Associates.
This is a contract that we have to essentially compile and submit the water quality and gas monitoring data that Kira and Michael go out to the landfill and collect periodically under our orders from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. Also under those orders, essentially that data needs to be compiled and submitted to them on a semi-annual basis, and this is that report. It doesn't indicate many things that have changed since the last few reports, so it's a receive and file kind of situation. Though I'd be happy to answer any questions if the board has any questions about the monitoring data at the landfill.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any
Just-
questions?
Just in reading over this, any thoughts on how we're going to navigate this process of getting a downgrade well for sampling? Have we made any progress whatsoever with property owners being willing to allow us the privilege of ensuring that their water is what it should be?
The short of it is several things have changed. The big change has been that the person who used to be looking over our shoulders on behalf of the Regional Water Quality Control Board is no longer in that position. So, and the nature of oversight from these entities it makes a big difference. Who's in what role and what they're looking at and what questions they're asking. And so that line of inquiry from the previous person from the Regional Water Quality Control Board has stopped. The new person has not pursued that line of inquiry, and so we're kind of in a holding pattern at this point. Is that correct, Kira?
Yes, that's true. And also the Lawrence and Associates are continuing to say that due to not finding any VOCs or anything, that it's not warranted at the time, but they are still checking. We check the same amount every single time. So they haven't, it's gone down, any findings,
So we're basically just testing the E4 pair then? We're not, I mean, okay.
That's correct.
I mean, because the push has been previously, I think that, and that's fine, if that's what we're getting from the Regional Water Quality Board, then that's great. I would like us to continue to explore those outreaches with property owners as there is transition, because some of these property owners had tenants on these properties, and that was part of some of the challenges that we faced historically, is that tenants create those roadblocks, and property owners simply don't want to have to deal with it. But I think for the standpoint of making sure that we are continually monitoring this responsibility, because the next person may come back and want to have real strict oversight, and then we're trying to play catch-up. So as long as we are continuing to be cognizant of the fact that as other things change, that we make those outreaches, I think it's a good idea. So, thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Ward? Okay, so we will receive and file that report and move on to 5.1, receive and file Recology Del Norte financial statements for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2022.
This could be real quick. This is essentially an annual report we receive from Recology that they are required to produce under contract, and essentially it is a summary of their financial statements as we annually summarize ours. It's important to have an outside accounting firm do this, because otherwise what you receive is just whoever says. So it's important having some professional standards, but this does give an overview about the Recology's finances. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but receive and file is a fine response.
Any questions or comments from anyone? No? Okay, we'll receive and file 5.1. Moving on to General Solid Waste Authority matters, 6.1, discussion and possible action regarding elections of authority chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer. So at this time, every year, it's traditional to flip the seats from county being chair to the city being chair. It goes back and forth. So at this time, I will take nominations for the authority chair.
I would nominate Chair Short.
Well, That would go against tradition, which would mean that the chair would switch from the county to the city.
I believe, I'm just here as Plan B today. I believe that the person they're actually going to assign from the city is going to be Isaiah Wright.
Oh, that hasn't been officially,
It's Jason.
oh,
Jason and I are the two appointments for solid waste.
I know, I think they're changing it. I could be wrong. I think that's what Eric said to me today.
Well, I didn't, that's news to me. So Jason has served for the last 4 years.
And I've not, has there been a change in appointments? I've not received word of that.
News to me. So. But I would be willing to serve as chair again, Michael, if you want to, since we don't know who the other person is, maybe. If we want to
Absolutely.
switch it. But we're not required to switch it.
No,
There's tradition, but we're not required.
that is true.
and I would point out that Chair Inscore served many years in a row without it alternating between the city and the county.
And I guess officially, Mike has made a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any public comment then? Seeing no public comment, I guess, is there any, I guess I'm supposed to ask for any other nominations.
Do you want to chair the
No, it
committee?
doesn't matter to me. Jared's doing fine.
Okay.
Seeing no other nominations, Kira, will you pull the vote, please?
6 years out of 8, so it's fine.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes. Oh, no, I did.
Sitting right next to you.
Okay, presently, we have Commissioner Green. I was going to say Commissioner Jason, but that wouldn't work. Is currently our vice chair. Is there any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Blake Inscore.
We have a nomination. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
We have a first and a second. Is there any other nominations? Is there any public comment? Kira, will you pull the vote?
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes. Secretary and treasurer is up next. Our current secretary is Commissioner
I nominate
Tompkins.
Mike Tompkins.
I will second
I won't
that.
even let you.
Traditionally, the chair is not supposed to second things, but I'm going to second that one. Is there any other nominations? Seeing none, is there any public comment? Seeing none, Kara, will you pull the vote?
Can you, real quick,
Oh.
can you remind me what the secretary does?
He signs official documents on behalf of the authority and for the board.
Okay,
That's right.
all right.
He can sign
So,
claims and minutes.
The
You
requirements is the
can, you can pull
ability
the
to
vote
write.
now.
I do it on
Your name. We'll follow Kira's direction.
On 75%. Can you sign your own name?
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes,
Commissioner Shalong.
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
okay.
Secretary Tompkins.
So I guess they're kind of like keeping us in these positions till we get it right.
I guess they are. Okay, for treasurer,
Do we have to actually make a nomination for Mr.
No, he's an official officer, but he's also a contractor of the authority, and so
yes, I thought
pretty
that
much.
was-
I mean,
that was on.
if Mr. Taylor was not willing to do this, we would have to go through an RFP process and find another CPA that could play the role.
Do we need something for the record to acknowledge that we?
Yes.
I would make a
It's-
motion that we approve Mr. Richard Taylor as our treasurer for the authority.
Is this, it seems like this would be a contract.
Second.
It seems like this would be a contract, not an election.
It is. It's an official officer of the board, but
Are
it
we-
is a contractor,
Are we
yes.
basically approving the contract?
That you're improving the extension of the contract. So we pay him for, and he's the number one person who signs claims. We consult with him on all issues of finances or insurance or those kinds of questions or issues that we have with the auditor, and he then works as an intermediary using his fiscal knowledge to help inform us so that we're providing the right information. But he's a valuable asset, and it needs to be a CPA, so it's usually not an elected
And it's in
official.
order to keep the minutes correct for the bank, correct?
Well, it's more, for instance, when we engage with the annual audit, he is an important part of that process. He's a part of our fiscal controls in that all of the claims that are approved, on the claims approved by director, those are countersigned by Rich to make sure that we're not spending things improperly or outside the budget. So it's a regular fiscal control, and it's probably our most important single fiscal control.
And is the contract in this agenda?
No, it's not. We've had the same contract for some time, and it gets extended through this process.
A long
Since
time.
'94, right?
A long time.
Yeah.
I would just suggest if you're going to extend a contract that it should be available for public review.
Very reasonable, and we certainly have that available.
So we could table this then? Till we do?
I don't
I don't think we need to.
think, I think we are okay as far as the agenda goes and this item goes. I think we're fine to.
But I will take a look at that contract to see if there's anything that needs attention, but the amount that we pay him on a regular basis is also on the claims approved by directory each month.
Appreciate the suggestion.
Why don't we
I hope you've
pull
received
the
an
contract,
increase since I
scan
was
it
on
into
the board
this
last.
set of minutes so the public has access to it?
Sure.
All right.
Easy enough. Not a
Pretty
bad
good.
deal at all.
Might we review that contract and maybe
Of course.
give him a cost of living adjustment?
Might be needed by now. Okay, moving on to item 6.2, discussion and possible action regarding guiding.
I need
Oh.
to pull the vote,
Yeah, I
sorry.
got pulled away.
Kara, what's taking you so long? Sorry.
I don't know. Today is just not my day. Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore.
Yes.
Chair Short.
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
I have to say this, the two times I've been on these boards, these are some of the nicest boards I've ever been on, because normally, if you're absent from a board, you get elected. Because that's the, I mean, if you're not there, the train is hitting you. You're gonna get nominated and you're gonna get run.
And the only reason that didn't happen is we're not sure who that other city person is, or they would have gotten named.
Jason.
Well, I have it in a text. It's going to be Isaiah.
So,
I don't know why.
Person that doesn't show up on election day.
they were done. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Interesting. Okay, 6.2 now that we've taken care of business. Discussion and possible action regarding guiding principles for legislative advocacy.
This is something we bring back every time about this, every year about this time, as we prepare for the legislative season. Essentially, there are times when bills that are of concern to this agency move through the legislature pretty quickly. And sometimes our best opportunities are, for advocacy are at the committee level, and a single bill can go through 2 or 3 committees between board meetings. And so by adopting general principles of legislative advocacy, that gives some guidelines that if there are any bills that either chime in with these principles or conflict with them, then we have the wherewithal that the board has viewed these principles, I can confer with the chair, or we can generate a letter quickly and get it off in a timely manner so that we can effectively advocate for the interests of this agency. And so, but it's important that everybody agree to these ideas, or that we discuss them, or if you don't, we pull it out, because this is intended as a consensus document, so that if there is opportunity to engage, then we do so. What I suggest adding to this revision are in underlines, and one is under extended producer responsibility. I've suggest that we add the sentence, "The authority supports extended producer responsibility programs for hazardous and single-use products that are commonly used and disposed in California, but which are incompatible with existing recovery programs." So ideally, you add a new recycling program, it should fit into existing recycling programs. But if something is causing a health or a safety hazard, and it's regularly disposed, then there should be a program for that. And the first people to be responsible for that program are the folks who are making that item, because they're the ones who are in the driver's seat about how that item is manufactured. And in all honesty, the first thing that comes to mind is vape pens. But it's those kinds of devices that are concerns, and there needs to be a program for them. And if there isn't one, then this gives an opportunity for advocacy. The other thing I added was, with SB 1383 in mind, I thought we might add the sentence to, under control of greenhouse gas emissions and carbon sequestration, the following sentence: "The authority is skeptical of the presumption that separate collection and processing of yard debris and food scraps in many rural areas will result in a net decrease in greenhouse gas emissions, and assert that further study evaluating such presumptions should precede mandating such programs in rural areas." Because this is currently what we're up against. If the law isn't changed or the deferrals aren't extended, the law does call for establishing separate collection and processing of food waste, even in communities like ours. And like I said, I kind of need to be convinced that that's a good idea. So those are my recommendations. So I recommend that the board either modify or adopt these guiding principles so that we're in better position to advocate for legislation throughout the year.
Any concerns, questions?
No, I just
input?
appreciate you adding under item number 8, and I would like for us to remain focused on this, in that while some of these guiding principles, oftentimes these guiding principles are about the things that we are in support of, that by adding this, we are positioning ourselves in a place where, when the legislature, when Cal Recycle is doing things that is negatively going to impact our community, that we will be just as vigilant about opposing things that they are doing. And this gives us that framework within our legislative framework to address this, and I know that your work with the ESJPA provides you some keen insights on that, and so I thank you for doing this. We've talked about this at length.
And we're going to try to amplify this voice by, if the board approves this, then I'll share this with our ESJPA colleagues, which then will give a template for them to be able to do a similar thing with their boards, and then we've all got a set of principles that we can
One size
assert.
doesn't fit all, especially in rural communities.
Right.
Very
Quick
true, very
question.
true. Yes.
Just regarding the vaping piece, have you talked with Amber Weir or anybody at Tobacco Free Del Norte?
Yes, I'm actually giving a talk later this month at a webinar they're having, and they've asked me, this is the second or third time they've asked me to make a presentation on the challenges of proper disposal of those items.
And they may be a great resource for a letter of to support the advocacy.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
Yeah, this is very similar to something the board had, identical to what the board had on our last agenda. So, yes, and as long as you're consulting between yourselves and the chair prior to any letter going out, there should be no problem with this.
Okay, is there any public comment on this legislative advocacy item? No public comment, a closed public comment at this time. A motion would be appropriate for the adoption of this.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we make the additions as noted in our agenda to items number 4 and 8 in our legislative platform.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We do have a second. Kara, will you pull the vote, please?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Chair Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Okay, item 6.3, discussion and possible action regarding the financial statements and independent auditor's report for the year ending June 30th, 2022, as prepared by Harshwall and Company.
I think it's safe to say I have never been more excited to receive an audit in my entire life. So could I have the slide? So this is an unusual graph in that usually you see graphs as going above zero. And this graph, we're working our way towards zero, which is essentially what we've been doing since this agency opened the Del Norte County Transfer Station, because at that point we had the liability both of the landfill and the construction costs of the transfer station. And so slowly we've been digging ourselves out of this hole, and this is the first year that the audit does not specifically recommend that we raise rates. Prior audits, all of them said we should raise rates, and our response was always, well, that's a political decision, thank you for your advice. And so we continued on, but we did try to strike the balance between what is a reasonable service fee and paying off our liabilities. So it's been over 15 years, 17 years, but this last audit put us at just $8,579 in the hole at the end of June 2022. So chances are at this point we're actually in the black, but we won't know that for sure until next year's audit. But the trends are definitely in the right direction, and this is the closest we've come to a net zero position in the history of the agency. So, good news.
Very good. Is there any comments, questions, concerns from any of the board members?
I just say congratulations.
But yeah. For
It's
sure.
been the work of this board since its formation, and month after month, making good decisions. Thank you for that.
Is there any public comment on this item? Nobody online? Okay.
So this is actually a receive and file and accept, because the board does have to take action on this, but it's an accept and file.
Chair, I'd make the motion that we approve and receive and file the financial statements and independent audit report for year-end June 30th, 2022, prepared by Harshwell and Company.
Thank you for that. Do we have
Second.
We have a second. Kara, will you pull the vote, please?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Chair Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong, Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
Okay, item 6.4, does anybody have any heartache over changing our August regular meeting from the 8th to a special meeting on the 15th of August?
No, it's canceling the regular meeting on the 15th and scheduling a special meeting on the 8th.
I did it backwards. Sorry. Thank you for the correction. I don't know how I managed to do that. But yeah, canceling the regular meeting on the 15th, backing it up a week and having it on the 8th.
It's so that Kira and I can attend an annual conference.
Do you just need consensus direction?
Yes, I didn't want to change, I won't change the board meeting dates unless you approve that.
Yep.
I move to approve a special meeting date of August 8th, 2023, canceling the regular meeting of August 15th.
Well, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any public comment? No public comment. Kira, will you pull the vote then?
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Inscore,
Yes.
Chair Short,
Yes.
Commissioner Shalong,
Yes.
Commissioner Tompkins.
Yes.
With that, we are finished with our regular items on our agenda, and we will now adjourn into closed session.
I can
Yes,
say that
this
we
is
do
a-
not anticipate any action out of closed session,
Thank
but
you.
I will announce that following.
Thank you very much.